I'm DeVries, and I'm a flower farmer from California. Now, that is mostly. Just a disclaimer, I also grow a few tulips in Canada, eh? So, as the Grower Council Chair, I'm here to articulate some of the trends that we're going to discuss this morning. And what we're seeing in our industry is a continued consolidation, particularly on the supply chain side, with breeders and distributors on the supply chain side consolidating. And one of the best examples of that is the AgroBio acquisitions in the last year. And AgroBio now is a company that produces in excess of 1 billion cuttings a year. We're also seeing smaller growers disappearing. Heavy margin pressure among all the farmers and growers we talked about this morning. We're seeing farmers taking less emphasis on top line and more emphasis on the bottom line, because there's a continued margin squeeze among the growers. Then weather. What's a farmer or a grower without the weather? It's always about the weather. And so we talked about the weather issues in some of the different areas. One flower farmer actually reported that last year, due to a late spring freeze, actually lost 85% of his flower production. That's the life of a flower farmer. Then for the Valentine holiday, apparently Ecuador was early this year. Colombia was right on time. And for the first time in many, many years, there were no weather issues in Colombia. On the other hand, California has been cold. Very cold spring, very cold January, February, and it affected mostly the Southern California crops in San Diego County, but also farther up the coast. And some of those growers missed the holiday, or at least a portion thereof, and some of the production started coming in later, but has put some pressure on the market after Valentine's Day. Then in Mexico, particularly in central Mexico, apparently there was a freeze just last week on March 3rd and 4th, and it has affected a lot of the flowers that are grown in central Mexico, and the anticipation is that that will affect production for Mother's Day. Then another general trend is that growers are getting more cautious and less speculative in the crops they plant, and basically plant what is sold and not more than that. An increasing trend with herbs being grown. And then Florida is coming back. And so the growers from Florida were reporting that there's some additional construction. People are actually starting to buy more bedding plants there again. Then California Grow continues to get more traction, and it's benefited by the general rise in the American Grow movement, and then particularly the American Flower movement. And the phenomenon of the American farmer is one of the rising tides, and for those of you who watched the Super Bowl this year, great segment was Paul Harvey recognizing the American farmer. And the flower farmers are seeing a benefit from that as well. The consumer wants to know where their food is coming from, and by extension, they also, once asked, want to know where those flowers are coming from. And most consumers do not know where the flowers are coming from today. And as that awareness is rising, I believe, and our group believes, that the American flower farmers will benefit from that. With that comes the slow food movement. You may have heard about that. And there is now a slow flower movement. And there's actually a conference being planned for in San Francisco this year, the Slow Flower Conference. Then, last but not least, 3 years ago, during the same event, the group kicked off Women's Day as an American flower holiday. And I see many faces in the group who helped out with donating flowers in Georgetown that year. And it's very gratifying to stand here and to give a report on Women's Day. And to some of you, you may not have heard about it much yet, but it's happening. It is starting to happen. Laura Bush just yesterday by the way, it was Women's Day, March 8th. Laura Bush did a blog post, and it was carried by many across the nation. SAF did a blog post last week on Women's Day, and it's been carried very well. And then in general terms, the supermarkets, some of the major supermarkets in America are now starting to carry Women's Day flowers. And a few examples, Safeway, the Albertson, Texas, and Phoenix divisions, H-E-B, were all supermarkets yesterday that were running a Women's Day promotion. And then Whole Foods ran a one-day tulip special just yesterday on Women's Day, selling over 1 million tulips in one day.